Unsolved Mysteries Lost Episode. On July 9th, 2024, one Reddit user made an extremely unsettling post on the RBI, or the Reddit Bureau of Investigation subreddit, which read, "Help finding a TV episode to possibly solve a murder. I've spent years and hours through Google trying to locate this and was advised you guys might be able to help. Trying to find what rerun episode of Unsolved Mysteries aired on a specific date/location that I'm convinced had a story of my ex-husband murdering a couple. I was at a hotel in Bakersfield, California on August 17, 2000, and at 11 p.m. they had a rerun of Unsolved Mysteries on the TV. I have no idea what station would have played it. I'm watching them talk about a situation where a smooth-talking stranger gets himself invited into their home, etc. I jokingly kept thinking to myself, yeah, I know someone smooth like that. This person ended up murdering the couple. Fast forward to the end and they show a sketch. I literally sat up in the bed. It was my ex. Yes, he would have been capable of that, and I believe he would have been driving through that area around that time, angry that I just left him." The user also mentioned that they had already contacted the show but hadn't received any answers from them. And despite years of looking online, they haven't found any clues. Now, my first assumption when I came across this post was that it was nothing more than a hoax created by the user. After all, the idea of someone stumbling upon their ex-husband's involvement in a murder during a late-night rerun of a TV show feels almost too cinematic. Maybe they had a flair for dramatics, or maybe they were just a fan of lost media. So they crafted their own dark tale with a personal twist that would leave the readers yearning for an update that would never come. However, the more I looked into the case, the less plausible this theory seemed. For starters, I looked through their posts and comment history on Reddit and didn't find a particular interest in lost media, horror, or anything of that nature. The account was also created back in 2018, so it wasn't created recently to fabricate this bizarre story. More importantly, the details given in the post seem a bit too specific to be something the original poster just made up. I went through old TV schedule guides from around that time, and sure enough, a rerun of Unsolved Mysteries did air on the live channel on the 17th of August 2000 at around 8 p.m. But if the Reddit user is telling the truth, how did an entire episode of such a popular and well-documented TV show just vanish into thin air? Especially since the whole show is now available on YouTube, and yet there's no sign of an episode matching their description. The closest case I found was from a 1994 episode about the disappearance of Jonathan Francia. The investigators working on this case were able to create a sketch of the potential suspect, and it was a man with a long face and a cowboy hat. This did match the description the Reddit user gave in a comment about the sketch they saw on TV. However, this is where the similarities ended between the two cases. To make matters even more puzzling, another person claimed to remember something similar in a comment reading, "I have a vague recollection of this episode as well. I'm going to go through the episodes I've watched on Unsolved Mysteries on YouTube and see if I recognize it." Unfortunately, despite rewatching all of the available episodes, they didn't find anything about the mysterious case either. Though it's entirely possible that Unsolved Mysteries changed parts of their episode after its rerun in August of 2000. As Redditor Rob Frey mentions in their comment, "The reason why it might be so hard to find and why you can't just watch old episodes to find it is the segment may have been changed from what was originally aired. Unsolved Mysteries used to edit segments as new information came forward, especially after a case was officially solved. If they caught the guy who did it, they may have removed a lot of the information from the case that made you think it was your ex, especially information that was completely speculative or a red herring. As an example, I remember they had a really good segment about a murder in a family who owned a U-Haul, and it went into a lot of the family infighting and drama, and there was at least an implication that a family member was most likely to blame. When they caught the guy and it turned out to be a random breaking and entering, they cut all of the family drama stuff out of the segment and added an update that the case was solved." The only potential flaw in this theory is that if Unsolved Mysteries changed that episode because the case was quote-unquote solved, the Reddit user would have likely learned about their ex getting arrested, but that didn't happen. From what I've seen, the most likely theory is that maybe they saw the sketch on some other crime show and are simply misremembering it as a part of the Unsolved Mysteries episode after so many years. This would explain why no one was able to find the hint, despite scouring every episode of the show from its conception. However, if this turns out to be true, it would also make searching for what they saw on TV that night exponentially more difficult. Unfortunately, unless someone finds concrete evidence, we have no way of confirming or disproving any of these theories. That being said, if this lost media is ever uncovered by people on the internet, it could help authorities solve a decades-old crime and catch the suspect. Easily available explosive. During the 2016 Silicon Valley Comic-Con, one of the hosts of Mythbusters, Adam Savage, was doing a panel answering questions from fans of the show. Near the end of the panel, someone asked him about the biggest disaster he's experienced on Mythbusters.
What is the biggest disaster that you've ever had behind the scenes filming Mythbusters?
Now, this fan was likely expecting something tame, like a crew member spilling something, or one of the devices they built breaking before they could film the episode, something of that nature. However, no one could have anticipated the answer Adam gave for this simple question.
Wondering how specific to get. The biggest disaster we had was Cary Grant and Tori were investigating a easily available material and its supposed explosive properties. What they found out was so explosive that we destroyed the footage and agreed never to say what we learned.
The material they discovered was so explosive and dangerous that they had to report it to DARPA, which is a research and development agency of the United States Department of Defense. Adam also quickly moved on to the next question, likely in an effort to avoid giving any hints about what this dangerous material could be. Following that panel, he refused to utter a single word about the last episode or the material that made them destroy the footage. That silence was held until the 20th of November 2023 when he uploaded a Q&A video on his YouTube channel titled, "These Mythbusters stories got scrapped due to danger." The first question in this video was someone asking about footage that was destroyed outside of Adam's control. At first, he gave a predictable answer, explaining how network decisions like cutting scenes to make room for advertisements had led to some lost content. But before moving on to the next question, he brought up the commonly available explosive again. And while he was careful not to drop any hints about what the material could be, he did go into more detail about why they decided to erase the footage from existence.
We were looking at the purported explosive power of a commonly available material, and what we found was something so energetic when we executed it that we agreed to not talk about what we learned. Yeah. It was common enough, easy enough to implement, easy enough to execute that we were like, the world will not benefit from this knowledge. This is the reason you never saw a silencer episode from Mythbusters. Is a potato a good silencer? A pillow? A 2-liter bottle of soda? These are all really interesting questions. And silencers are fascinating technologically. But silenced rounds are not a benefit to humanity.
This makes total sense considering Mythbusters had tens of millions of viewers from around the world. The show built its reputation on demystifying myths and delivering facts, no matter how surprising or dangerous they might be. By withholding the episode, it may seem like they went against their own character. Some might even argue they had a responsibility to release the episode, both for the sake of scientific transparency and to educate the public about potential risks. Educating people about the potential dangers of a common material could have sparked important conversations about safety and regulation, potentially preventing accidents born out of ignorance. But here's the other side that's hard to ignore. Mythbusters wasn't just a science show, it was also entertainment. Publishing a step-by-step guide on how to weaponize an easily available material would have been, at best, irresponsible and, at worst, catastrophic. The world isn't short on people who might misuse such information, and the stakes were simply too high to ignore. So, the team's decision to shelve the episode was the responsible thing to do. That said, I did some digging online, and speculation about what this mysterious explosive could be is all over the place. Some claim that it's simply flour. For those who don't know, non-compacted flour is extremely flammable and can easily create a sizable explosion upon combustion. Another chemical that came up in multiple theories was tannerite. It's a binary explosive that is commonly used for long-range weapons practice. It's helpful for marking targets since it detonates visibly on impact. More importantly, it's widely available online. Someone can easily buy tannerite online for relatively cheap without any permit or verification. However, here's the problem with both of these theories. Neither material creates an explosive dangerous enough to justify the drastic steps the Mythbusters team took. For instance, while a tannerite explosion is certainly impressive, it's not nearly dangerous enough to warrant such a drastic response from the Mythbusters team. While researching the topic, I came across a chemical known as triacetone triperoxide, which perfectly fits with what we know about the mystery chemical. For starters, both of the materials required to make triacetone triperoxide are found in most homes. Acetone, which is used as paint thinner and nail polish remover, and peroxide, which is commonly used as a bleaching agent for white laundry. More importantly, even tiny amounts of triacetone triperoxide can do unimaginable damage. Ultimately, unless someone somewhere has a secret copy of that episode and releases it on the internet, we'll never know for sure. And given how Adam described the danger of this material, it's just one of those rare cases where it's honestly better for the video to remain lost media. Jay Leno Blade Incident. On April 14, 2022, an anonymous user on 4chan's TV board mentioned a disturbing incident they remembered from an old episode of The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. They stated, "One time Jay Leno had a magician on his show and he was doing some sort of cut the lady in half trick. He starts to cut and the lady starts yelling for him to stop like she was actually getting cut or about to get cut, and they start helping her out. I have never seen or heard anything since and never been able to find the clip." The episode in question aired on the 21st of June 2001, and as the story goes, one of the guests on that episode was Arsenio Hall, who was going to perform a classic magic trick of cutting a person in half. However, while he was performing the trick, something went horribly wrong. He accidentally stabbed the woman who was volunteering for the trick. A notable thing about this episode was that Leno wanted to show solidarity with the California power outages. So he hosted his show in a set that was only illuminated by scattered candles and handheld flashlights given to the audience. Maybe the lack of visibility caused Arsenio to make a mistake and harm the woman. Unfortunately, a vast majority of old Tonight Show episodes barely exist in archives and therefore are considered lost media. The June 21st episode is among those lost to time. So there's no way for me to directly verify this incident. But I did find enough clues to piece together what might have happened, and there are three distinct possibilities. First is that such an incident never actually happened and the 4chan poster was making it all up. However, this possibility doesn't hold up because I found old forum posts from 2001 where people were actively discussing the incident online after watching it. Like this person named Dan, whose post gives more details about what exactly went down. "Did anyone else watch The Tonight Show with Jay Leno Monday night? It was a repeat, the one where they turned out all the lights in the studio and had a blackout. Anyways, so Arsenio Hall was the guest, and he was going to do a magic trick where he was going to cut a woman in half. So the woman is lying in the box, and he's trying to shove the blade through, and all of a sudden the woman starts screaming and yelling, 'It cut me,' and like immediately they cut to a commercial. I was like, what? It has to be a joke. So then when they came back from commercial, Jay seemed flustered, and they didn't mention anything else about the trick for the rest of the night. Did anyone else see this? Does anyone know anything about what happened with this woman? It was so freaky." I also found someone on Reddit who also remembers the incident and mentioned it in the comments of a post discussing the incident, stating, "Holy, I thought I dreamed that episode. I've been wondering what happened to that lady for 20 years. So a woman did get stabbed on the Jay Leno show, or at least that's what it looked like to the audience. Which brings us to the second possibility. The woman did get hurt and the incident was later covered up by the network to avoid backlash from the public. However, as much as some people would like to believe this is nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Because as it turns out, the Jay Leno show is not live, it's taped ahead of time. So if they wanted to cover it up, they would have edited that whole thing out long before the episode ever saw the light of day. Even knowing this, some claim that the showrunners simply forgot to edit this section out and only realized their mistake when it was too late, which is a bit of a stretch. Think of it this way, Jay Leno's show was getting upwards of 7 million viewers in 2001. So even if the network tried to bury the whole thing later, why didn't any of these millions of viewers cause any backlash? From what I've seen, the most plausible theory is that the incident did happen, but it was all part of a skit. And the people who thought it was somehow real were simply not paying enough attention or just didn't realize the dry humor of the scene. This would explain why there was no uproar from the public. And as for the episode becoming lost media, that wasn't a deliberate cover-up, but just a side effect of the pre-YouTube era when preserving TV episodes wasn't a priority. But who knows, if the speculation gains enough momentum, Jay Leno, Arsenio Hall, or someone else from the show's production team might come forward with the truth. Until then, all we have are educated guesses to piece together the mystery. Sharon Davis's Unsolved Mysteries episode. Sharon Eugene Davis was a 51-year-old school teacher living in Dallas, Texas. She lived with her 2 children, Autumn and Ronnie, and their husband of 21 years, Ron Davis, who she married back in 1980. Unfortunately, her relationship with Ron wasn't ideal. Just 5 years after their marriage in 1985, Sharon filed for divorce while describing her husband as controlling and ill-tempered. She withdrew cash from their mutual account and was planning to move to LA with her 2 children. However, soon after filing for divorce, she mysteriously changed her mind and returned to living with Ron. Fast forward to June 11, 2001, Sharon once again found the courage to file for divorce. And this time she was prepared to go through with the decision at any cost. She was planning to move out of her house in the 1900 block of Elderleaf Drive, all while her attorney was trying to obtain a temporary restraining order against Ron, her husband. However, just as everything seemed to be falling into place, tragedy struck. On June 13, 2001, at around 7 a.m., Sharon dropped her daughter at Rapid Transit Park and Ride Station, 2 miles from their home, and went on her way. She was scheduled to attend a training session at Stemmons Elementary, but she never arrived. Even after her children asked their father to report their mother missing on the evening of June 13, 2001, he refused to contact the authorities until a day later, starting a citywide search for Sharon. And after 4 days of searching, investigators finally found her car abandoned in a parking lot near the Southwest Mall in Oak Cliff. The car had a broken window and was also wiped clean of fingerprints. And while all of this was highly suspicious, the lack of evidence meant that Sharon's disappearance was filed as a missing person case. Ron and her 2 children were called in for interviews multiple times, but the investigators weren't able to find any leads from either of them. Sharon's mysterious disappearance 2 days after her filing for divorce also made Ron the prime suspect in many people's eyes. However, the complete lack of evidence prevented authorities from treating him as the potential perpetrator. When asked about it, this is what the lead officer had to say. "We've had a lot of people ask us if he, Ron Davis, is a suspect. This is a missing person case. There are no suspects at this time. We don't have any criminal evidence, although we fear foul play has occurred. Right now, Mr. Davis is a witness, an uncooperative witness." And after months without any leads, Sharon's case caught the attention of the producer of Unsolved Mysteries, who wanted to air an episode on her case. They produced the segment in mid to late 2001, and it was scheduled for broadcast sometime in spring of 2002. The last thing they needed was an interview from Ron. However, when the producers approached him, he denied their request and was quite stern about it. But when they wanted to air the segment without Ron's interview, he objected again and sent an accusatory letter to the producers telling them not to air the segment on Sharon. And that's where the lost media aspect of this story comes into play. The showrunners complied with Ron's request/threat and scraped the whole thing. And as far as I'm aware, the footage has never seen the light of day. It's entirely possible that a witness could have come forward with critical information after seeing Sharon's story on TV. However, Ron's refusal closed the door on any potential leads that could have changed the course of the investigation. This obviously put a lot more attention on Ron. He was even given nicknames like the most guilty non-guilty man. But it's been 22 years without any updates to Sharon's case. Game in the Sand. Game in the Sand is the name of a shocking short film by the German director Werner Herzog. If you've ever heard of him, you'll know he's famous for pushing boundaries, and not always in a good way. His sets are very well known for being chaotic, and there have even been injuries and deaths during his productions. And apparently he's been this way since the very beginning. You see, Game in the Sand was the second film he ever created back in 1964. However, after completing the film, Werner was so horrified by the footage that he decided to never release it to the public. The only thing we know about the short movie is that it featured 2 children, a rooster, and a cardboard box. It was also filmed in a sandy area, hence the name, and according to Werner, things, quote, got out of hand during shooting. The premise of the movie is also a complete mystery. The only thing Werner has talked about is a scene where the rooster was buried in sand up to its neck. Everything else we know about the film comes from speculation, and given Werner's reputation, people online have come up with some pretty wild theories over the years. Some think the rooster suffocated after being buried, forcing the children to watch it slowly die. Others suggest the kids might have killed the rooster in a brutal way, either on their own or under Werner's instructions. This could explain why it was buried in the first place. Some have also speculated the opposite. Maybe the rooster injured the children with its sharp beak or claws, and Werner captured that on film. The problem with these theories, however, is that none of this comes even close to the stuff that's been released under Werner's other productions, like deaths being shown. What could have gone so wrong during the filming of Game in the Sand that was worse than this? Of course, there's the possibility that Game in the Sand isn't real at all, just something Werner made up to add an air of mystery or create hype for his future projects. Unfortunately, we'll probably never know the truth. The identities of the children involved were never made public, and the film's composer, Uwe Brandner, someone who might have been able to shed some light on what really happened, passed away in 2018. So even if the short film is real, I highly doubt Werner would have a change of heart 60 years later and release it to the public. The Skyway Man. Ormer Locklear was an American daredevil stunt pilot who became popular in the early 20th century after doing the craziest plane stunt of his time. After footage of his stunt went viral across the country, Ormer was hired for a role in a pseudo-documentary film about stunt flights called The Skyway Man in April of 1920. Put simply, the film was like a collection of the craziest stunts Ormer could successfully pull off in a plane. Filming for the movie began on June 11, 1920 in the LA and San Francisco area. However, the stunts featured in the film were quite tough, including a church steeple being toppled by Locklear's aircraft and an aircraft-to-train transfer, both of which nearly ended in disaster. But despite the many close calls, Ormer and the other stunt pilots remained unharmed. It was soon time to record the last stunt of the film, which was relatively safe compared to what Ormer had done before. It was going to be a simple spin move that was filmed during the day with special camera filters to make it look like the whole thing was performed at night. However, when Ormer learned that the studio wasn't going to extend his contract beyond one film, he demanded to perform the stunt at night, likely as a desperate attempt to impress the producers. Unfortunately, this is where his luck ran out. On the 2nd of August 1920, Ormer and his longtime flying partner Milton Elliott took flight at night. To make the plane visible to the camera in the dark, the production crew illuminated it with massive arc lights. However, these lights were a bit too bright, so the crew was going to turn them off after the stunts just so Ormer wouldn't be blinded and he could land safely. Maybe it was negligence or simply bad luck, but the crew forgot to turn off the lights. And to everyone's horror, the plane crashed into the ground, killing both Ormer and Milton on impact. However, unlike today where such an accident would shut down even the biggest film productions, at the time Ormer's death became the selling point of the film. People flocked to the theater to see the breathtaking stunts and, more importantly, the uncut death footage of the lead stuntman. Unfortunately, the film has since been lost to time. We do have some evidence which proves that it was real, like a memorial for Ormer and Milton in the November 1920 issue of Screenland magazine. I also found a short review for the film from the same magazine issue which reads, Ormer Locklear's Last Picture, directed by James Hogan. Louise Lovely, now a Fox star, furnishes delightful support. Full of thrills and mid-air stunts, the best picture we've had. The Fox company is giving 10% of the profits of this picture to the families of Locklear and Elliott, who were killed while filming the final scene. As for the film itself, it's become lost media in the truest sense of the word. Over the last century, there have been multiple attempts to locate a copy. All have been unsuccessful. Annuncio Inteligente. Back in 2019, a user named Raul made a disturbing post that would go on to be shared over 20,000 times and receive tens of thousands of likes and reactions. The post was originally made in Spanish, so you'll have to bear with me if the translation isn't perfect, but hopefully you'll get the main idea. The post was titled Annuncio Inteligente, which translates from Spanish to smart ad, and it read, "Something super strange just happened to me. I was watching YouTube videos on my smart TV when suddenly an ad appeared, as usually happens on YouTube. I was about to skip it when I suddenly saw this ad lasted more than 5 hours. I was really surprised and told my dad to come so he could see how long it lasted. I took a picture while I waited for my dad to arrive. The girl in the ad kept on talking, and when my dad arrived, she turned her gaze toward him. Even my dad jokingly said that she was watching him. My dad and I stood in front of the TV, the girl fell silent, and we felt like she was looking at both of us. We kept thinking it was impossible for her to see us. It wasn't a video call or anything like that, it was just a simple YouTube ad. It was simply impossible for her to see us. We laughed at how silly it all sounded. The girl kept on talking, but suddenly she got closer to the screen and we started to feel a bit scared and uncomfortable. My dad wanted to test if she was watching us, so he said the word Changa a few times, and that's when the unthinkable happened. The Asian girl said Changa. At that moment, we got scared and I looked for the remote to skip the ad. My dad and I decided that we were very tired. It had been a long and tiring day, but we still couldn't ignore what had happened, so we turned off the TV. My questions are, what the heck just happened? Do TVs have cameras? If so, then I think it's possible for them to watch you. And lastly, was YouTube hacked? This incident scared both my dad and me. If anyone has gone through something like this, I'd like to hear your story. This was mine. Although the original post has since been deleted, it's been reposted a few times by Mexican broadcasting networks on Facebook, which has allowed a few YouTubers and Redditors to keep the story alive for 5 years as of the uploading of this video. From the moment it was uploaded, the post received pretty much every kind of reaction you can imagine, from those who called Raul out for lying on the internet to get attention, to those who claimed they had been through something similar, and everything in between. As for whether the post was real or not, 5 years after the original upload, it's still anyone's guess. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to place 2 to 3 hour long ads on YouTube. As for how effective these ads are at converting viewers into buyers, I can't really say, but the fact remains that it's technically possible Raul really did see a 5 hour long YouTube ad back in 2019. One thing that many Reddit users were quick to point out, however, is that YouTube ads need to be uploaded in a specific format to be accepted and rolled out by the platform. And it goes without saying that a 5 hour long live call where the creator of the ad spies on the viewer and interacts with them would violate pretty much every single law and regulation out there. Still, that in itself is probably not enough information to officially label Raul's post as fake, as he was apparently not the only person who complained about this kind of thing happening to him that year. Through my research, I found several Redditors who pointed out that they had seen similar posts by other users on Reddit crop up sporadically in 2019, where people claimed they had been shown an unusually long ad that appeared to interact with them in real time. If the allegations are true, it's possible that what happened to Raul could have been a part of a massive hacking epidemic targeting smart TVs rather than YouTube itself, which the hacking of smart TVs isn't that uncommon. It's actually not that hard for a hacker to gain access to your smart TV's microphone and camera through certain malware, which is why if you look deep enough online, you'll find literally hundreds of complaints by users who claimed they were spied on through their smart TVs. Disturbingly, some users have even mentioned that hackers have blackmailed them through their smart TV, threatening to expose private footage of them to the world if they don't comply with their demands. But coming back to this smart ad story, this also doesn't necessarily mean that the post was real, and to this day, hundreds of Redditors have assumed that Raul was probably just straight up lying for clicks and attention. Unfortunately, because the post and so many of the original comments have been deleted, we'll likely never know. Do what? Portishead is a trip-hop band from Bristol, UK that was formed back in the 90s. Some of their music videos on YouTube have gone pretty viral, with one of them even getting close to 40 million views since it was uploaded in 2016. But over the years, there's been one particular music video that's become the subject of a ton of speculation and drama on YouTube and Reddit, and probably not for the reasons you might think. The music video in question is for the song titled Only You, and at first glance, there's nothing too different than what you'd probably expect from a band of this genre. But if you scroll down far enough into the comments section, you'll find something a little strange. A user named DoWhat made thousands upon thousands of comments on this single video over several months starting in December 2018. Sometimes DoWhat would comment hundreds of times in a single day. What immediately comes off as weird is that most of the user's comments appear to be random, angry rants directed toward a particular person or group of people. Sometimes it even looks like he's having a long, drawn-out conversation with himself through a YouTube comment section. I can't include some of the comments because they get pretty explicit, but you can probably get the idea just by looking at a few of them. One of them reads, "Heaven, yeah sure, and yet you still left me here. Well, you won't be going back, and I sure as hell won't take you there." Another one reads, "Nothing you say or have said means a damn thing when you spoiled evil demons live the way you do, period." At first, none of the comments seemed to make any sense, but after reading a lot of them, I realized there was a pattern. Although a lot of the angry rants are pretty vague, and a lot of them DoWhat appears to be directing his or her anger toward the band and the music video itself, often claiming that the whole idea behind the songs and videos that made the band rich were stolen from DoWhat, who allegedly ended up getting no credit at all. Again, I can't include those due to the language, but some have suggested that this is the main reason why the user chose this particular video to dump thousands and thousands of angry comments on. As you can probably guess, a lot of people have tried to interact with DoWhat over the years, leading to some pretty disturbing conversations in which the commenter claims he's some sort of interdimensional being with the ability to speak to people on different timelines, or something like that. Even though most of his comments are pretty difficult to understand, in a few of them, DoWhat has repeatedly claimed to be a female living in a homeless shelter and to be receiving messages from some sort of godlike creature who is guiding her to save humanity from destruction or something. Due to how often DoWhat was posting back in 2018 and 2019, many people have suggested that the only way it's possible for so many comments to be coming from a single account is if DoWhat was a bot. But others have claimed that because DoWhat has edited their comments, the bot theory might not be the answer. As hard as it is to believe, everything seems to point to the fact that every single one of these comments was written individually by a real person, which has made a lot of people suggest that the user might be suffering from a pretty severe mental illness, or was simply looking for attention online and willing to go to extreme lengths to get it. But for why, we don't know. Other people have speculated that the whole DoWhat mess was perhaps the band Portishead's attempt to bring more attention to their music video through an alternate reality game or ARG, but because DoWhat started posting comments on the video more than 3 years after it was uploaded, this is pretty unlikely. If this was an ARG, then it's brilliant because obviously it did its job. After posting threads upon threads of aggressive, rambling comments, DoWhat's original account was taken down a few months later, but the comments section on Portishead's video didn't get any less strange after that. Shortly after DoWhat went quiet, other accounts started cropping up and posting a ton of angry comments in the same tone and style as DoWhat. But because most of them only posted 20 to 30 times in total, whereas DoWhat usually posted a few dozen times a day, it's likely that these new accounts were just copycats trying to get attention. A couple of the newer accounts though, namely Tracy-PV5CL and MebWhatever5413 are suspected to belong to the original DoWhat. Still, after so many years and so many comments, it's unlikely we'll find a solid answer to what the purpose of all this is. Sad Satan. In 2015, a channel by the name of Obscure Horror Corner uploaded a series of videos featuring a playthrough of a horror game called Sad Satan that up until that point was never heard of before. The game itself is very strange, with a first-person character walking down dark, narrow hallways while some distorted audio plays in the background. At random points throughout the game, the player's screen gets invaded by random images, and overall it's a pretty dark and hard to understand game. In the months following the original uploads, the videos started gaining quite a bit of popularity, until eventually the blog and gaming reviews website Kotaku decided to interview the owner of the Obscure Horror Corner channel. In the interview, the channel owner mentioned that he first came across the game when an anonymous user provided him with a download link, which had allegedly come from the dark web. Shortly after, the owner of the Obscure Horror Corner's YouTube channel provided the download link to the Sad Satan game in a Reddit thread. However, several Redditors immediately called him out for providing a fake link, after which he claimed he gave away a fake link because he didn't want to be responsible for the real game being played by anyone, as it supposedly contained some very violent, dark, illegal, and disturbing images. While this was all happening, an anonymous 4chan user claiming to be the guy who gave the original Sad Satan link to Obscure Horror Corner revealed what he claimed was the original download link on the post. Disturbingly, this version of the game was stuffed with illegal, graphic content, gruesome gore, and viruses that allegedly made people's computers behave oddly and eventually crash permanently. Unfortunately, many users fell into the trap and apparently messed up their computers beyond repair. After the two links were spread everywhere online, a lot of people were left wondering where the footage from Obscure Horror Corner's channel had even come from in the first place. The most widely accepted theory nowadays is that Obscure Horror Corner probably made the game himself to bring more attention to his channel, and that the 4chan user made a corrupted copy to distribute illegal graphic material and mess up people's computers for no reason. It goes without saying that the illegal images the 4chan user included in the corrupted version of the game could have easily come from the dark web, as they would quickly get taken down if they were posted anywhere on the surface web. If you're going to go searching around the internet for more information on this rabbit hole, all I can say is whatever you do not click on any download links on random online forums. Intelsat 708, February 15, 1996. Back in the 90s, an American company named Space Systems Loral built a state-of-the-art telecommunications satellite named Intelsat 708, which contained some pretty sophisticated and sensitive communications and encryption technology. After it was built, the satellite was transported to China to be launched in 1996. During the launch preparations, it was agreed between the US and Chinese governments that Intelsat 708 would be launched into orbit from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center using China's Long March 3B launch vehicle, which was one of the world's most powerful rockets back then. It was also agreed that the launch would be broadcast live in the US. Just a little before 3 a.m. on February 15, 1996, the satellite was launched, and what happened next was nothing short of a tragedy. Just 2 seconds after the launch, the satellite started veering horizontally, taking a completely different trajectory than it was supposed to. A few seconds later, the rocket crashed in a residential area where many of the launch center's employees and other civilians lived. Shockingly, the crash caused an explosion that was reported to be equivalent to around 50 tons of TNT. Immediately, the Chinese military and members of the Loral security team were deployed to the crash site, and this is where things started to get a little weird. According to eyewitnesses, the Chinese military roped off the area immediately and didn't allow any Americans to approach the site until much later. In the aftermath of the crash, official figures in Chinese newspapers alleged that despite the massive explosion, only 6 people had died and 57 had been wounded, claiming that the death toll had been pretty limited because most of the people had been evacuated from the area before the launch. Still, based on the sheer amount of destruction, this death toll has always seemed unlikely to the US government, which suspected the Chinese military of cleaning out the crash site to hide the true death toll and to recover the satellite's sensitive encryption and communications technology. After American members of the Loral security team were finally allowed to comb the crash site, many of them returned home complaining of bulging eyes and splitting headaches caused by the toxic fumes released by the explosion. Despite the large-scale impact of these events, it's one of the lesser-known tragedies, likely due to the massive cover-up by the Chinese government. One of the only recordings left of it was uploaded to YouTube by a user named Fred V and has received only around 170,000 views since 2019. In the video, you can see the crazy amount of destruction caused by the crash in the village of Maolin, with both American and Chinese voices narrating the damage. Strangely, at the end of the footage, the entire video takes a weird turn where you can see a clip of a woman who says her name is Janet Ship, and that in order to help her viewers prepare for their trip to China, she's going to ask a few simple multiple choice questions.
Hello, my name is Janet Ship, and in order to prepare you for your trip to China, we would like you to take this simple multiple choice quiz. Remember, there is only one correct answer for each question. Ready? Here we go. This is a picture of A, a creature found in nearby hills, B, dinner, C, a Hughes technician. These guys should score a point in horseshoes, A, in 30 to 40 minutes, B, when Mabuhay launches.
I searched pretty deep, but there doesn't seem to be any explanation online for the quiz at the end of the crash video. It's all just a really weird combination of clips. I mean, it's pretty jarring to have such a shocking video end with a woman asking weird questions with happy music in the background, and your guess is as good as mine as to what the last part of this video is even about. Unfortunately, the comments were turned off for this video, and not a lot of people know about it in the first place, so who knows if we'll ever find out why the video ends like that. 00390. 00390 is an extremely strange YouTube channel that's been up since 2015. Even the description in the channel's About section is a little unusual. The text is written in both English and Italian, and it reads, "Do not subscribe, you bother me. Do not offer me money for affiliation or visualization or other. I am not interested. At best, offer me some typical food of your country." Below this text, there's another phrase that translates roughly from Italian to, "I like cold girls, but alive." Despite the owner's efforts to scare away subscribers, 00390 has over 50,000 subs as of 2024, and that number is probably only going to keep growing if he continues to upload disturbing, attention-grabbing content as he has up until now. The videos on the channel range from strange experimental art videos to first-person footage of a cameraman following a woman on the street, to disturbing images of women being held hostages while creepy audio plays in the background, to gross cooking videos. Due to the creepy nature of so many of the uploaders' videos, many viewers have come together online to try to find an explanation for the channel, which has resulted in some pretty wild theories being spread all over the internet. According to one of the most popular ones, the channel's owner is a suspected serial kidnapper who drives around the street looking for potential victims, which would explain why there are dozens of videos on the channel where he appears to record women on the streets against their will, with some of them looking visibly frightened at the guy. Based on what I found, there isn't really a solid conclusion for the channel's meaning. It's possible that this is just the product of an artist expressing himself with some sort of ARG attempt, or that there's really something more disturbing going on. Whatever the case, if the guy isn't a kidnapper, he's not exactly helping his case by uploading videos like the ones he has up until now. The "oh that's real nice" meme comes from an episode of the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants, where Martin, a side character in the show, looks into a toilet bowl only to find a realistic-looking SpongeBob floating inside. The moment itself tied into the overall plot of that episode, but the meme that came out of it was meant to contrast someone doing an ordinary task like going to the toilet or clocking in at work with an unusual or disturbing discovery. And while most of the posts mentioned completely fictional events, a few instances of the meme format referenced real events that actually happened. This particular incident took place at the Bethlehem wastewater treatment plant on January 7, 2000. A worker named Scott Batchman had clocked into his night shift at around 11 p.m. when he noticed a pink, fleshy object while cleaning out a catch basin. He took it out and rinsed it off to get a clearer look. However, nothing could have prepared him for what that object turned out to be. Scott was holding one half of a human brain in his hand. It was a bit difficult to identify, but Scott's past work experience at a coroner's office allowed him to confirm that it was real and not a prop. He immediately contacted the authorities and handed it over to them. This discovery happened on a Friday night, so a proper analysis didn't happen until Monday. However, according to initial reports, the brain looked like it was fresh and had not been in the sewer system for very long. The situation became worse when it was sent over to a DNA lab for testing, which confirmed that it belonged to a person. Unfortunately, authorities had no matching DNA on record, making it impossible to determine whose brain it was. The treatment plant also received waste from 13 different municipalities, so they couldn't link it to a nearby missing person report either. The question now was, how did a piece of human brain end up in the sewer system in the first place? One possible explanation the authorities considered was that it came from a medical cadaver, suggesting that a medical student might have flushed it down the drain either on purpose or somehow by accident. However, the lack of any major decomposition pointed to a much darker possibility. The brain likely came from the victim of a homicide, with the killer attempting to destroy evidence by dismembering the body and flushing the pieces down the toilet one by one. And unfortunately, it seems their plan worked as intended. The investigators were never able to link the discovery to any reported crimes, leaving the case an unsolved mystery to this day. The traumatized Mr. Incredible meme depicts a normal-looking Mr. Incredible next to a haunting, uncanny version of him. The template uses a before and after format to highlight how hidden context changes a person's perspective, where people who don't know see a surface-level image or phrase and remain blissfully ignorant, represented by a smiling Mr. Incredible. In contrast, people who know understand the dark, tragic, or disturbing reality behind the subject, represented by his hollow-eyed, traumatized face. This specific version of the meme refers to a silent tragedy that occurred in many parts of Mexico in the late 1980s, and the cause for it originated over 7,000 miles or more than 11,000 kilometers away in Ukraine. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear plant suffered the worst nuclear disaster in history. During a botched safety test, a massive power surge caused Reactor 4 to explode, releasing a plume of radioactive fallout that drifted across Europe. The immediate blast killed 2 workers, while dozens more lost their lives to acute radiation sickness shortly after trying to contain the fallout. However, by the time they were able to enclose the malfunctioning reactor, it had already spread massive clouds of toxic, radioactive particles across Europe and Asia. Mexico, in theory, should have been far enough from the disaster site to stay unaffected. In reality, government corruption and greed turned it into a problem that ordinary Mexicans were forced to live with in their day-to-day lives. You see, radioactive particles from the Chernobyl meltdown contaminated crops and livestock across Europe and Asia, making a significant portion of their food unsafe for consumption. Ireland was among the more heavily affected countries, with thousands of tons of milk in the region becoming radioactive. The Irish government tried to get rid of this contaminated milk by selling it to poorer countries. And after getting rejected by Brazil, they reached an agreement with the Mexican government to sell 40,000 tons of radioactive powdered milk at discounted prices. The toxic milk reached Mexico in June 1987 and was then distributed across the country by a state-owned company called Conasupo. It made its way into ordinary households where consumers had no idea they were drinking what was essentially poison. The truth finally came out when Navy Vice Admiral Manuel Rodriguez Gordillo commissioned a nuclear physicist to test the milk. And as it turned out, the milk the Mexican government bought from Ireland exceeded 10 times the permitted limits of radioactivity. The government initially tried to suppress the news by accusing the whistleblower of defamation, stripping them of their position, and putting them in prison. But the backlash got bad enough that the government was forced to issue a complete recall by January 1988. Unfortunately, the damage was already done. Over the following decade, the number of children suffering from cancer skyrocketed drastically. Many endured life-altering deformities, while countless others lost their lives because of it. Even those who survived the initial radiation poisoning now face a higher risk of developing cancer later in life. The deeply unsettling Mr. Incredible meme illustrates a person's reaction to discovering something truly horrifying. The template is often paired with a caption highlighting disturbing events or shocking facts, and this particular use of it is no different. It summarizes the horrific sight a Chinese explorer named Beanbag Adventures uncovered in February 2022. Beanbag's content on Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, revolved around him exploring abandoned buildings and showcasing any interesting finds. However, one of these adventures spiraled into a nightmare his viewers could have never imagined. The video started with him entering an abandoned hospital or lab of some kind. It was extremely run down and appeared to have been vacant for over a decade, if not more. Broken furniture, torn clothes, and glass jars were everywhere. But what really caught Beanbag's attention weren't these items. He was more drawn to the overpowering smell that was filling the whole building. Curious, he decided to find its source. He followed the paths where the smell grew stronger and eventually reached a strange, dilapidated room with a pool in the middle of it. He looked inside the pool and before showing it to his viewers claimed that it was filled with movie props. The pool was filled with what looked like the remains of dozens of children floating in a mysterious liquid. He spent barely a minute inside this room before the smell became too unbearable and he had to run out gagging for air. The horrifying sight left most of his viewers in shock, with many also trying to figure out if any of it was real. But for now, many accepted his movie prop explanation and didn't question it further, especially since the alternative was far too gruesome for most to even contemplate. A lot of the remains also showed few signs of decomposition, making it easier to buy into the prop theory. However, the possibility of these remains being real became impossible to ignore when Beanbag returned to the same location 10 months later. This time, he decided to explore the rest of the building before going back to the pool room. Unfortunately, the other locations proved to be just as disturbing. I can't show most of this on YouTube, but he discovered rooms full of extremely realistic human skeletons, children's toys and masks, and a few glass jars with what looked like human fetuses stored inside them. Things somehow got even worse when he returned to the pool room and found things that weren't there before, like glass jars and children's clothes on the ground, and most unsettling, a blue tarp partially covering the pool. This showed that someone else had been in that room in the last 10 months. But that wasn't even the worst part. The most disturbing part of Beanbag's second visit came when he pointed his camera at the pool. It not only contained more remains than before, but many of the previous ones were also noticeably more decomposed than last time, disproving his movie prop claim. Though, given what people now know about the situation, it seemed he called them movie props just so he could feign ignorance in case he ever got into trouble. It also helped in keeping the videos from getting removed from the platform. Put simply, Beanbag and now most of his audience suspected that this room was a part of an illegal organ harvesting operation known as a corpse factory. You see, China has one of the lowest organ donor rates in the world due to cultural reasons. Yet, despite this limitation, the process of actually getting an organ for a transplant is relatively easy as long as you have the money. That's because most of these organs are said to come from China's massive black market, where merchants illegally abduct victims to meet the demand. Some reports also claim that the Chinese government is somehow involved in this operation as well, with it allegedly harvesting from minority prisoners that aren't even on death row. Even if the government wasn't involved, Beanbag was putting a target on himself by possibly exposing such a large-scale criminal operation. So, acting clueless was his best bet. But even then, his safety wasn't guaranteed. Fans were worried about his well-being. This concern became even more substantial when Beanbag's Douyin account got terminated out of nowhere shortly after posting the second video. Viewers believed that whoever Beanbag exposed was trying to silence him before the story could spread further. Though, just as they were about to lose hope, Beanbag returned to the internet with new videos. However, the 2 videos of him exploring the hospital were now deleted from his account. Beanbag also kept posting more videos exploring other abandoned buildings and never even brought up the hospital again. If someone was trying to silence him, wouldn't it be easier to make him disappear, or at the very least keep him off the internet forever? So, what's going on here? Well, the internet has come up with many theories trying to solve this very question, but nearly all of them contain contradictions or details that don't align with the known facts. The most popular of these theories is that the room was used to discard victims after harvesting their organs. But here's the thing, if someone was actually running a massive criminal operation, wouldn't it be much safer for them to hide the evidence in mass graves or use industrial incinerators to cremate the remains? Especially if the Chinese government was involved, as many suspect. As for his account getting temporarily banned, that could be explained by Douyin simply taking it down due to the excessive gore his videos showed, which is also why he was allowed to return after deleting those videos. Alternatively, some also believe that this room was the trophy room of sorts for a serial killer. But the sheer number of victims makes that highly unlikely, even if it was a group of multiple killers. Then there's also the possibility that Beanbag faked the whole thing to go viral, or that it was an art project of sorts. And while he wouldn't be the first one to try something like this, the remains in the pool were way too real to be fabrications. Beanbag would also have to spend tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to commission such a large quantity of props for both videos, all without getting any real return on his investment, so the remains were most likely real. Unfortunately, there's no way for us to determine how they got there. Beanbag stopped uploading in April 2024 and hasn't returned to the internet since. He also never shared the location of the building, so no one else can investigate it either. And as far as I was able to find, the authorities never looked into this, leaving this whole thing unsolved, possibly forever. This meme recounts the tragic life of Ricard Siagan, a 48-year-old tattoo artist from Philadelphia who lost everything he had in a single year. Ricard had 2 passions in life, his only son and art. He created music, did photography, and eventually settled into a career as a tattoo artist. He also shared videos of his tattoo work on YouTube quite often, likely just to document his own progress. Every second he wasn't working, he spent with his son. He had a seemingly perfect life, and was still striving to do better for the only person in his life. Unfortunately, this perfect life was ripped away from Ricard in 2015. This was the year he moved to Philadelphia and started working there as a tattoo artist. However, months into his new employment, he contracted a urinary tract infection, or UTI for short. The pain was so severe that it made it impossible for him to work. But since his insurance didn't cover UTIs, he couldn't afford to go to a doctor. With no other option, Ricard spoke to his boss about his illness, hoping for help or at least some guidance. And as it turned out, his boss had also gone through a UTI recently. His boss still had some of the antibiotics his doctor prescribed, which he happily handed over to Ricard. Ricard was a bit skeptical at first, but a single dose dramatically reduced his pain. So he kept taking the antibiotics and was soon well enough to return to work. But before he could celebrate his recovery, Ricard noticed another major health concern. He was experiencing insomnia, making it difficult for him to sleep each night. Unfortunately, that was only the beginning. The insomnia was getting worse with each passing day. 4 months in, and it became severe enough to prevent him from sleeping altogether. None of the treatments he tried worked, and he was rapidly running out of options. So, in January 2016, he uploaded a video asking for the internet's help, titled, "Che Fatal Insomnia Neurotoxin Induce, CNS Seeking Neuroscience Hospital Support or Stem Cell Hope," where he went over all the disturbing details of his condition.
my brain also looking forward to sleep, but the activity of the brain is never calmed down. It's been 4 months since my brain is active. It never sleep. It never want to go down. And when my body asks my brain that I need to rest and sleep, there's no connection, but there is a feedback. There is a really painful feedback, physical feedback and neuron feedback.
Ricard explained his condition as fatal familial insomnia, a devastating neurological disorder that essentially locks the brain in a state of permanent wakefulness. It's caused by a genetic mutation that targets the thalamus, the section of the brain responsible for transitioning the mind from consciousness into sleep. What made the already terrible situation even more tragic was that he was also separated from his son. He had to return to Indonesia due to his mother's hospitalization, but the insomnia now left him bedridden, unable to fly back to his son in Philadelphia. Ricard still wanted to do everything in his power to survive for his son, but the constant unbearable pain was also sapping away his will to live.
I need life. I have my sons in Philadelphia now. I left him. I have no choice. Because I don't want to leave him. I need life. I need to survive. I don't want him to lose me. I don't want to lose him.
From there, Ricard kept posting updates on his condition and even shows what happens anytime he tried to sleep. But here's the thing, Ricard wasn't suffering from fatal familial insomnia because that disease is genetic. It's not something someone can just contract out of nowhere, and no one in his family had this prior to him. Instead, Ricard's neurological issues were the side effects of ciprofloxacin, the antibiotic Ricard took from his boss for his UTI. Ciprofloxacin falls under a type of drug known as fluoroquinolones, and they are incredibly dangerous. Taking them without proper precaution can cause total neurological degradation. Unfortunately, even after knowing what it was, Ricard couldn't do anything, and his condition was getting worse with each passing day. He was starting to get delirious and began posting rants that made little sense.
Conspiracy theory has never been a theory. It's a practice. So the world that created by the system.
Without sleep, the cells in his body were also starting to die, leaving him even more immobilized than before. He received some hope from a doctor in Beijing who offered a cutting-edge procedure that had previously worked for one patient. However, the procedure's cost was beyond what Ricard could afford. And while he did set up a fundraiser, the donations never reached the required amount. And after struggling with his condition for over a year, Ricard sadly passed away on the 6th of December 2016 in Indonesia. The traumatized Mr. Incredible in this instance is a reference to the death of Isaiah Fitzgerald, an 18-year-old teen from Missouri who lost everything due to an internet argument. The incident happened on April 25, 2023, when a guy named Tanner Watkins uploaded a new profile picture on Facebook with his girlfriend, to which Isaiah reacted with a laughing reaction. The two were friends on Facebook, but it's unclear how close they were. Regardless of their connection, Tanner did not take kindly to Isaiah's reaction and called him out in the post's comments. Their discussion quickly divulged into an argument and ended with the two agreeing to meet each other in person to settle things. The vast majority of internet arguments usually end here, with both sides moving on with their lives. However, both Tanner and Isaiah were serious about this confrontation. After agreeing on the spot and time, they met up at the Rotary Park in Sykeston, and unfortunately neither side was open to a discussion. As soon as they got close to each other, both opened fire from their cars. Isaiah was fatally shot seconds after the shootout started and passed away before help could arrive. The 18-year-old girl Isaiah brought with him also received life-threatening injuries. Fortunately, she managed to pull through after multiple surgeries. As for Tanner, he somehow managed to avoid conviction for the death of Isaiah, though he was eventually sentenced to 7 years in prison for an unrelated shooting in 2025. This meme is about a deadly attack that happened in Chicago in 1982 regarding Tylenol pain relief capsules. On the morning of September 29, a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman took a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol to soothe a sore throat. But instead of feeling relief, she collapsed and passed away shortly after. That same day, a 27-year-old postal worker named Adam Janis also took Tylenol for his headache. Seconds later, he suffered what appeared to be a heart attack and tragically passed away. While his family gathered to mourn his death, his brother Stanley and sister-in-law Teresa each took Tylenol from the same bottle Adam had used. Within hours, those two were dead as well. By the time the connection was made, 3 more people, including 27-year-old Mary Reiner, 31-year-old Mary McFarland, and 35-year-old Paula Prince, had also lost their lives. Testing revealed that the Tylenol capsules they had consumed were laced with potassium cyanide, one of the deadliest poisons in the world. And since the victims were spread across different suburbs, investigators quickly realized this wasn't a manufacturing error. Someone had gone into local grocery stores and pharmacies, pulled bottles off the shelves, laced the capsules with poison, and put them back to be purchased by unsuspecting strangers. Investigators had no way of knowing how many other poison bottles were still on the shelf. So, in an unprecedented move, the makers of Tylenol, Johnson & Johnson, stepped forward. They issued a nationwide recall of approximately 31 million bottles, a value of over $100 million at the time. Authorities also urged the public not to take any Tylenol product, and for good reason. In the early 1980s, over-the-counter medicine was sold in simple bottles with easy-to-open caps. There were no plastic neck seals, no foil liners, and no tamper-evidence stickers. The realization that a complete stranger could turn a common household item into a weapon of mass murder changed this mindset overnight. In response to the tragedy, the FDA introduced stringent new regulations. Within 6 months, Tylenol returned to shelves in the first ever triple seal packaging. This included a glued outer box, a plastic wrap around the cap, and a foil seal over the mouth of the bottle. However, even this was not a perfect solution. In the months and years following the attack, police stations across the US were flooded with hundreds of copycat reports. And while many of these were hoaxes, some turned out to be legit. Like in 1986, when 23-year-old Diane Ellsroth died after taking a Tylenol capsule laced with cyanide in New York. That same year, another medication named Excedrin was targeted in Washington state, leading to 2 more deaths. These attacks forced the pharma industry to evolve this packaging further and make poisoning more difficult. However, while the attack led to an overall positive change, the original 7 victims never received the justice they deserved. Despite a massive investigation, a $100,000 reward for information, and several suspects, no one was ever charged with the actual murders. One of the suspects, named James Lewis, actually contacted Johnson & Johnson, claiming he would stop the killings if they sent him $1 million in ransom. But investigation revealed that he had nothing to do with the actual attack. He was just trying to take advantage of an already tragic situation. The most popular theory is that this attack was carried out by one of Johnson & Johnson's competitors to ruin their reputation, which makes a lot of sense considering Tylenol's market share dropped from 35% to 8% following the incident. That said, it could still have been the work of a deranged serial killer intent on claiming as many lives as possible. Unfortunately, investigators found no solid clues like fingerprints or CCTV footage that could help us confirm or deny these theories. Angel of Death Challenge. On June 3, 2022, an 18-year-old teen tragically passed away after falling in front of a truck in Tangerang, Indonesia. However, what made this particular incident stand out among the dozens of traffic-related deaths on Indonesian roads every day was that this was not an accident. Instead, this was the result of one of the most disturbing internet trends that was sweeping the country during this time. It had actually started back in 2021, but exploded in popularity in mid-2022. The trend was called the Malaikat Maut Challenge, or the Angel of Death Challenge in English. It involved TikTokers, mainly teenagers, playing a game with oncoming traffic, particularly loaded trucks. Their goal was to run out onto a busy street in front of a truck, hope it stops before hitting them without flinching, and post the video of the stunt online. But completing this dangerous challenge successfully was a lot harder than many of its unfortunate participants realized. Most of them jumped onto the road as the truck got extremely close, giving the driver virtually no time to notice them and apply the brakes. But even when drivers had enough time to see the kids performing these stunts, they still couldn't slow down in time to prevent tragedy. Trucks usually carry heavy cargo, and that weight doesn't stop on a dime. The heavier the load, the longer the braking distance, sometimes stretching dozens of meters even after the brakes are fully pressed. So by the time the drivers reacted, it was already too late. Not to mention the fact that this trend was also putting the truck drivers at risk, both physically and psychologically. For one of these cases, involving a 14-year-old participating in this challenge, the driver fled the scene, likely out of fear of facing criminal charges. If he had instead stopped and cooperated, the footage of the teenager's friends captured for TikTok would have proven his innocence. But by running away, he turned himself into a hit-and-run suspect, potentially jeopardizing his job and even his freedom depending on the charges he received. Following the incident in Tangerang, Indonesian police acted quickly to prevent further tragedies. They managed to stop 14 more kids from attempting the same dangerous stunt that very day and continued to monitor the city over the upcoming months. However, the attempts in Tangerang, Indonesia were only a small part of the global trend that cost several lives and left many others with life-altering injuries over the next year. Thankfully, TikTok eventually stepped in and removed all content related to the Angel of Death challenge. And since social media validation was the main reason participants took part in this dangerous trend, the platform's ban caused it to gradually fade into obscurity. Happy slapping. On the 21st of January 2005, the Tez magazine in the UK reported on a new trend spreading rapidly across the country, something they referred to as happy slapping. Contrary to its name, however, the trend was anything but happy. In essence, it involved people, often young adults or teenagers, going up to a random person, slapping them, recording their shocked reaction, and then sharing that video with others. Personal camcorders and phones with cameras were becoming a lot more accessible during this time, allowing the attackers to record their crime and share it as something funny. These happy slapping videos were shared all over the internet for the whole world to see. As for how this trend initially started, some reports from the time linked them to violent TV shows like Jackass and Dirty Sanchez. A big difference between these shows and the happy slapping videos, however, was that everyone on TV consented to enduring the pain on camera. The people filming happy slapping videos, on the other hand, usually targeted complete strangers and bystanders for what they perceived as social clout. As a media expert from that time explained it, "What we see the kids watching these shows doing is thinking, well, maybe I could stage my own scenes of pain and humiliation along these lines. Then with happy slapping, people are drawn in as random victims rather than the kind of voluntary performances we get in the shows that are being copied. I think happy slapping has become a shortcut in the eyes of the slappers to fame and notoriety among the people who see the images circulated on the web or sent to them via their mobile phones." And while that was already bad enough on its own, things quickly took an even darker turn. As time went on, the recordings became increasingly violent, likely in an effort to outdo one another and stand out in the sea of dozens, if not hundreds of similar videos. Things went from humiliating but physically harmless slaps to coordinated attacks resulting in permanent injuries. One of the worst cases of this happened on August 31st, 2009 in South London. A 67-year-old retired care worker named Ekram Haq left the mosque on Church Lane in Tooting, England after the evening prayer, where he was then approached by two boys, 15-year-old Hamza Lazai and 16-year-old Leon Elcock, wanting to make a happy slapping video. Things quickly spiraled out of control as neither of them held back, resulting in Ekram passing away a week later from a severe head injury he received during the incident. The two were eventually identified and arrested after police reviewed CCTV footage from a nearby camera. Both pled guilty to manslaughter, with Leon receiving a 4.5-year sentence and Hamza sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. The happy slapping trend as a whole eventually faded away after the UK and the surrounding countries started treating it as a significant threat to public safety, with France even criminalizing it and giving it a punishment of up to 5 years in prison. Skullbreaker Challenge. On February 14th, 2020, 12-year-old Parker Smith was invited by his friends to film what seemed like a harmless jumping contest with them. He agreed, and on camera jumped the highest he could, but instead of landing safely on his feet, he fell backward and fractured his right arm. He was rushed to the hospital immediately, and fortunately made a full recovery over the following weeks. However, what seemed like a simple accident turned out to be part of a disturbing internet trend his two friends were attempting to recreate. The so-called Skullbreaker Challenge required 3 people to stand in a line and somehow convince the person in the middle to jump. As soon as they did, the two on the outside swept the legs of the one in the middle who was usually unaware of what was about to happen. This caused them to fall backward, usually on their head, which is where the trend got its name from. It started earlier that year after a video of 2 students from Spain doing it on their friend went viral on social media platforms like TikTok, prompting countless imitators to try and recreate its success. And, as you might imagine, the results were disastrous, with Parker being one of the lucky ones for walking away with just a fractured arm. Many others were knocked unconscious by the impact, suffered from severe concussions, and some even needed multiple stitches across their skull and face. The most devastating of these incidents happened on January 24, 2020 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, when a group of 7th graders attempted the challenge in school. Unfortunately, the victim fell way too hard on their head, causing them to lose consciousness and have a seizure. He luckily survived the incident and eventually recovered without any permanent head trauma. However, his initial condition was bad enough that authorities arrested the other two 13-year-old boys. They were charged with 3rd-degree aggravated assault and 3rd-degree endangering an injured victim since the harm they caused was mostly intentional. Now, I wasn't able to find any reports on whether the charges were dropped or not, but even if they were, being arrested for attempting a dangerous internet challenge goes to show just how dangerous it can be. TikTok also stepped in and banned all videos of this challenge on their platform. Unfortunately, once something is on the internet, it never truly goes away. As evident from 2 girls finding videos of the Skullbreaker challenge, attempting it on one of their classmates, injuring them, and getting charged for it in November 2022, more than 2.5 years after the original fad ended. Fortunately, there haven't been many reports of kids getting injured because of this challenge ever since. Kia Challenge. Near the end of 2020 and throughout 2021, authorities in Milwaukee, Wisconsin noticed a significant increase in car theft. What made this even stranger was the fact that the majority of these stolen vehicles were either from Kia or Hyundai, with theft of these particular cars doubling or even tripling in some areas compared to previous years. However, before investigators could determine the cause of this surge, the situation spiraled beyond their control in ways they could have never expected. Put simply, stealing Kia and Hyundai cars became an internet trend called the Kia Challenge. It began on July 12, 2022, when a video captioned "Kia Boys" went viral for demonstrating just how easy it was to steal Kia and Hyundai cars manufactured between 2011 and 2021. All a thief needed was a screwdriver and any regular USB cable, since the connector just so happened to be the perfect size and shape to jumpstart the vehicle. This was a major hardware-level security flaw in dozens of car models, and there was no permanent way to fix the problem either. Now, the original Kia Boys video was eventually taken down by TikTok, but the information was already out there and it already sparked the Kia Challenge. Teenagers across the US started breaking into Kias and Hyundais and posting their stunts on social media to participate in the challenge. While the stolen cars caused a massive financial burden for hundreds of innocent residents, the real danger of the Kia Challenge came from what many of the thieves did once they had taken control of the vehicles. Since many of them had no intention of actually profiting off the stolen cars and were only doing it for the internet, they began taking the cars for reckless joyrides around town, putting their lives and the lives of everyone else on the road in extreme danger. One of these joyrides led to a police chase, which eventually ended with the out-of-control car slamming into the concrete barrier and the teenagers who stole the car trying to flee on foot. The most disturbing of these incidents occurred in Buffalo, New York in October 2022, where a stolen Kia ride ended in a fatal crash, taking the lives of 4 teenagers. In total, the Kia Challenge resulted in the loss of 8 lives before the disturbing trend was shut down by TikTok and other social platforms. Kia and Hyundai also had to settle a class action lawsuit for $200 million over the dangerously lax security in their cars. Car surfing. Car surfing, or riding on the outside of a car as if it were a surfboard, has existed as a trend long before modern social media was even a thing. It started gaining popularity in the early 1990s, compelling teenagers and young adults to speed down the highway while precariously balancing themselves on top. Today, most modern cars don't have much to hang on to on the outside to improve aerodynamics, which makes this already high-risk activity even more deadly. It only takes one small slip for even the most daring car surfer to fall onto the road. Something that's evident from a 2008 CDC report, which revealed that 58 people lost their lives while engaging in car surfing, and 41 others were severely injured since 1990. Unfortunately, the rise of social media and the desire to go viral with outrageous stunts have only driven that number higher ever since. Most recently, in May 2023, a 16-year-old boy tragically lost his life while car surfing out the back window of a car when the vehicle lost control and rolled over. He would have almost certainly kept his life if he were in his seat with a seatbelt. Sadly, the car surfing trend is just as alive today as it was 3 decades ago, and shows no signs of fading away anytime soon. Blackout Challenge. The Blackout Challenge has existed long before social media. The goal in this challenge is to achieve a brief high that comes from cutting off oxygen to the brain by intentionally suffocating until you lose consciousness. However, while many assume that blacking out from lack of oxygen is perfectly safe in the long run, that couldn't be further from the truth. The rewarding high in this challenge is in reality a dangerous form of cerebral hypoxia, where brain cells are deprived of vital oxygen. This can lead to seizures and hemorrhages. Even if someone survives the challenge seemingly unharmed, depriving the brain of oxygen for just a minute can cause permanent, irreversible damage. This can affect memory, reasoning, and other critical cognitive functions in the long run. The line between a fleeting, dangerous thrill and irreversible tragedy is terrifyingly thin, and once consciousness is lost, there is no way to control the outcome. Not to mention the very real risk of the person never waking up again. Unfortunately, many who try to recreate this challenge are completely unaware of these dangers, resulting in 82 people losing their lives between 1995 and 2007 alone. What makes this even worse is that almost all of these deaths were between the ages of 6 and 19. Much like other viral trends, young impressionable kids are especially drawn in, motivated by peer pressure or the need for validation, online or in real life. Which is why the resurgence of the blackout challenge through social media platforms like TikTok brought it to an even younger audience and left a devastating trail of victims. One of the most well-known cases is that of Nyla Anderson, a 10-year-old girl from Pennsylvania. Her family found her unconscious on the bedroom floor on the night of December 7, 2021. They rushed her to the nearby hospital. Unfortunately, it was already too late. After barely clinging to life for 5 days, she tragically passed away without ever waking up. No one knew why she would do something like this, until investigators did a forensic analysis of her phone, which revealed she had been viewing videos of the challenge on TikTok. Another tragic instance happened in April 2022 when a 12-year-old boy from the United Kingdom named Archie Battersby suffered catastrophic brain damage after attempting the challenge and passed away months later. And these weren't isolated incidents either. Numerous other children, some as young as 8, suffered a similar fate or other life-altering injuries after attempting this challenge. Sadly, despite social media sites' best efforts to suppress the challenge, it continues to spread to this day. Paris Catacombs lost footage. This footage of a man losing his way at over 300 feet below street level in the Paris Catacombs has deeply disturbed viewers since it emerged in the year 2000. The catacombs were originally used for limestone mining way back in the Roman era, but when cemeteries in Paris began to overflow in the late 18th century, the French government exhumed the bones and bodies from overcrowded cemeteries and buried them in the catacombs. Over time, the catacombs became a curiosity for locals and visitors looking to catch a glimpse of the more than 200 miles of tunnels that stored the remains of over 6 million people, and they were open to the public in 1809. Today, the catacombs are one of the most important tourist attractions in Paris, even though only about 1% of the network of tunnels is mapped and open to the public. Most of the tunnels are not structurally sound or safe enough for tourist activities, and it's actually illegal to access the unmapped parts of the catacombs. But this hasn't stopped hundreds of locals from exploring the seemingly endless network of underground tunnels. For several decades, French authorities have done everything in their power to cover the hidden entrances to the tunnels, but people keep finding manholes and secret access points throughout the city that lead to the off-limits areas of the catacombs. Although this footage was recorded in 1993, it wasn't released to the general public until the year 2000, when it was shown as a part of an episode on the ABC Family TV show Scariest Places on Earth. The episode features Francis Friedland, a French filmmaker who says he came across the mysterious tape when it was given to him by a catacomb explorer who found it in one of the tunnels. Disturbingly, in the episode it's mentioned that the man who recorded the point-of-view footage was never found or identified.
This video camera was found deep in the catacombs. It was picked up by a catacomb explorer, some of the people who wandered down there. It was given to me. I looked at the tape. It's very bizarre. This person occasionally stops and he photographs bones, often in the shape of an arrow. These arrows point in a direction. Occasionally also he stops to photograph roomfuls of bones, which means that he's very, very deep inside the catacombs. What happened to him? Nobody knows.
Some of the clips show rooms full of bones, arrows painted on the ground, and even a strange painting of a silhouette of a person on one of the walls.
So basically he's filming what he's seeing. Endless. Very deep inside the catacombs. View shots, other than our pictures of bones. human bones. These were the poor Parisians who died over the last 1,000 years. At times you'll see there's signs, painted signs on the wall, which is not uncommon. People have been painting in the catacombs for centuries. So it is possible with these paintings that we may be able to retrace an itinerary to some extent.
At one point in the footage, the man's breathing becomes faster and he begins to run, as if he was trying to get away from someone or something. Occasionally, the man stops, presumably to get his bearings and find a way back to the surface.
We hear his breathing get louder and louder, as though something was scaring him. He's frightened, he's frightened. Occasionally he stops, perhaps to try to decide which way to run among all the many different corridors. He's running faster and faster and faster, deeper and deeper into the catacombs. And all of a sudden, and he keeps rolling until it runs out of tape.
As the footage progresses, he runs faster and faster, until suddenly he drops the camera on the ground, where it continues to film until the tape runs out. After analyzing the video, Friedland explained that the room's filled with disorganized heaps of bones, and the fact that there's little to no graffiti on the walls of the tunnel meant that the man who recorded it would have been extremely deep inside the catacombs. Determined to unravel the mystery of what had terrified the missing man, Francis Friedland ventures into the catacombs with his crew. After comparing the footage to what they were seeing inside the catacombs, Friedland and his crew estimated that the missing man had been exploring the tunnels at around 300 feet below street level. At that depth, if flashlights or other light sources malfunction or run out of battery, the chances of getting out are pretty much zero. At one point during the episode, the crew's flashlight batteries begin to run low, and Friedland decides to give up the search, but then realizes that getting out is going to be much more difficult than getting in. Suddenly, Francis spots the same painting on the wall from the original footage, and after walking through the tunnel, they find the same room full of bones from the video. Despite these discoveries, they couldn't find whatever had scared the explorer who recorded the footage, and in the end, Francis and his crew give up and decide to call off the search after spending 12 hours underground. After the episode was released, thousands of viewers took to online forums to discuss possible theories regarding the footage. One of the most widely accepted theories is that after losing his way and realizing that he was probably not going to make it out alive, the man panicked due to claustrophobia and began to run, not knowing what else to do. But this theory wouldn't explain why he would drop his camera, one of his only sources of light. This fueled the possibility that the man had seen another person inside the catacombs. In the last few decades, several catacomb explorers have reported being robbed while they were inside the tunnels. If the man unexpectedly saw another person so far below street level, he may have feared the worst, which would explain why he began to run and drop the camera. Another popular theory is that the man saw something else that scared him. Scientists have explained that when the wind blows through the cracks in the walls of the catacombs, it makes an extremely low frequency noise called infrasound, or as it's sometimes referred to, the ghost frequency. This sound is normally inaudible, but the extreme bass sound has been demonstrated to create a range of bizarre effects in humans, from chills to anxiety to extreme sorrow. The ghost frequency is also known to make the human eye vibrate slightly, which makes people see shadows out of the corner of their eye. And coupled with the strange sensations the frequency creates in people, it's not hard to see why the man could have thought he saw something down there with him. This is definitely a possibility, but other people think the footage was just staged by the producers of the show to creep people out. It's strange how only about a minute and a half of the original footage was released to the public, but in the episode, Francis Friedland claimed that the original footage was over 40 minutes long. And all we have is his word about how the footage was even found in the first place. It was never confirmed whether the footage was staged or not, but what we do know for sure is that it was recorded 300 feet below street level in the catacombs. Hopefully with time we'll have more information, but for now the origin of this unsettling footage remains unknown. Mirjana Mortigard Glesgorv. The words Mirjana Mortigard Glesgorv might sound familiar if you've ever spent time searching for creepy videos on YouTube in the past. The story of Mirjana Mortigard Glesgorv first emerged in 2008 when a 20-second video with the same title was uploaded to YouTube by a random channel called Urwitzy. After the video was taken down by YouTube for unknown reasons, it was re-uploaded in April of that same year. The video in question shows a man with a mustache in front of a red, cloudy background staring intently at the viewer while an unsettling, high-pitched drilling noise plays in the background. Right before the end, the shot zooms into the man's face, and he can be seen grinning with his eyebrows raised for 2 seconds. In the weeks following the original upload, multiple duplicate videos surfaced on YouTube, including an extended 2-minute version accompanied by a creepypasta in the description, which was uploaded by a small channel dedicated to posting random, disturbing videos. According to the description in the extended video, the original version that was taken down also lasted 2 minutes, and it was removed by YouTube after 153 people who viewed it ended their lives by taking out their eyes and mailing them to YouTube's main office in San Bruno, California. The myth says they also put cryptic messages on their forearms, which were never deciphered. As the story goes, the video was only viewed by one YouTube staff member who started screaming 45 seconds into the video. The story also says that none of the other staff members who were in the room dared to look at the screen, but they reported hearing a high-pitched drilling sound before they turned off the monitor. It's mentioned in the myth that the staff member who viewed the video was left severely traumatized and is under constant sedation to this day, and that he claims that he can't recall what he saw. According to the creepypasta, because the IP address for the original video was non-existent, the uploader couldn't be traced by police, and the man featured in the video was never identified. After the extended version was uploaded with the creepypasta in the description, the video quickly gained traction in various online forums like Unexplained Mysteries and 4chan's Xboard. This triggered the creation of dozens of viral chain emails and articles related to Mirjana Mordigard-Glesgorv in several different languages. Thousands of users discussed the video on different Q&A sites such as Wiki Answers and Yahoo Q&A, which raised Mirjana Mordigard-Glesgorv to classic creepypasta status, and the story was archived on the website creepypasta.com. In August of 2008, the story spilled over to the Russian web, where it was covered in different blogs and articles. The Russian version of the creepypasta was updated with new details, including a popular conspiracy theory which claimed that the video was created by the US Secret Service. 2 days after the original video was uploaded, a now-deleted debunking video was uploaded to YouTube which claimed that the story behind Mirjana Mordigard-Glesgorv was a hoax. It also claimed that the man in the video was identified as Byron Cortez, a Guatemalan marketing coordinator at an LA-based advertising agency who lives in the US Virgin Islands. An image of him was used in a 2004 online survey about marketing professionals, and an Ebum's World user edited it to make the disturbing video. Considering the evidence that surfaced, the disturbing story behind the video is clearly a myth. If 153 people had really sent their own eyeballs to the YouTube's office via mail, the authorities would obviously have gotten involved, which never happened. Since the man in the image that was used for the video was found to be a normal guy with a job and a family, the picture was probably randomly selected by someone who just wanted to make a random, unsettling video, which later turned into a creepypasta by someone else. Blankroomsoup.avi. Blankroomsoup.avi is a strange video that has been on YouTube since 2005 and has received attention from some of the largest horror channels on YouTube on account of it allegedly being a leaked deep web video. This is what it looked like. The video in question shows a man in a white tank top eating a bowl of soup with a large wooden spoon in a room with white walls. A few seconds in, the man is approached by two people in doll-like costumes with black, lifeless eyes who appear to be comforting the man as he eats the soup. But the man doesn't seem comforted at all, and instead appears to cry inconsolably as he continues eating the soup. Immediately after the video was uploaded, disturbing theories started surfacing about this possibly being a real torture video. Because platforms like 4chan and Reddit were pretty new at that point, they became hotbeds for speculation on the meaning of blankroomsoup.avi. According to one of the most popular theories, the man and his family had been abducted by people in costumes, and after they murdered his wife and kids, they force-fed him soup containing the remains of his family, threatening to torture him if he didn't comply. Another theory was that the man was kidnapped alone, and that he's crying in the video out of fear while his captors taunt him with false comfort. In later months, more videos featuring the same characters started surfacing online, with some of them being pretty disturbing. One of them was a continuation to Blankroom Soup, and another involved the disguised characters kidnapping someone on video. While doing research on the origins of Blankroom Soup, the name of a man named Raymond Percy came up in connection with the mysterious costumes shown in the video. From what I was able to find, Raymond Percy is an animation artist and director who has worked on several big projects including The Simpsons, Frozen, and Wreck-It Ralph. He also has an account on the video sharing platform Dailymotion, where several videos featuring the same characters from Blank Room Soup can be viewed, but in much more innocent contexts. Using the Wayback Machine, I found that the creepy video itself was posted on Raymond Percy's account, but with the title Freaky Soup Guy, along with the caption, "A clip of people who look like us doing something to someone that we would never do, we promise." Most of the videos have since been deleted, including Freaky Soup Guy. The strange caption indicates that perhaps this creepy video was not made by Percy at all, and in 2016, YouTuber Rainbot contacted him directly to get to the bottom of the mystery. Raymond Percy explained that he had created the costumes himself. The characters' names were Ray Ray, and he had used them for several live performances all over the world. After one particular performance at a club on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, the costumes were stolen when Raymond and his crew were cleaning up the set. A few weeks later, he received an email with an attachment containing the creepy video, and he immediately posted it to YouTube and Dailymotion to share with his team. According to Raymond, the creepiest thing about the video was that the characters move in the same slow, paused fashion in which his own performers were trained to act during their performances, meaning that whoever stole the costumes must have been watching Percy's live performances for a while, and perhaps they were even fans. This new information disturbed a lot of viewers, giving way to a new wave of theories and speculation regarding the unsettling video. It was later found that the man who was being kidnapped in one of the later videos that surfaced on YouTube was actually Gil Sharon, the drummer of a horror-themed experimental rock band named Stolen Babies. Raymond Percy's sister, Dominique Lenore, is the band's lead singer, and Raymond had animated some of their videos in the past and included the Ray Ray characters in the videos. In one of the band's photo shoots, the drummer can be seen wearing the exact same costume as in the kidnapping video. The fact that Raymond Percy had participated in the creation of one of the creepy videos that surfaced led many people to believe that the man in the original Blank Room Soup video was actually Percy himself, and that his eyes had been covered so that he wouldn't be recognized. Even if the man in the video is not Raymond Percy, the fact that 3 sequels to the Blank Room Soup video surfaced on YouTube discredits the idea that the original video was a leaked deep web video. It's rare enough to see a leaked deep web video on YouTube, let alone 4 consecutive videos without any of them getting taken down. With all the evidence that emerged, many users claimed that everything Percy had said about the costumes being stolen was a lie. Because if they had actually been stolen and used for the disturbing videos, the last thing Raymond Percy or anyone would have done is to post the videos on YouTube and not report them to the police. Some people even speculated that the whole thing might have been a promotional campaign for the band Stolen Babies, but this hasn't been confirmed. Regardless of whether Raymond Percy was telling the truth, the one thing we know for sure is that blankroomsoup.avi was never a deep web video. While some still argue that the video and its sequels are genuine, there's just too much evidence against the authenticity of the videos today to conclude that they actually came from the deep web. I feel fantastic. Those who have explored the horror side of the internet have most likely at some point come across a bizarre video of a singing android. In 2009, a single video named I Feel Fantastic was uploaded to YouTube by the channel Creepyblog. It was the only video ever uploaded to the channel, and it basically shows a robotic humanoid singing the words I feel fantastic, you feel fantastic, you are fantastic, I am fantastic, hey hey hey, over and over again inside a room at night. As the video progresses, the android is shown in different poses and wearing different outfits. At one point in the video, the robot starts singing more mysterious lyrics like "Please leave, please me," and "Run, run, run." The description of the video is also extremely strange, and goes into the Greek myth of Pygmalion, the sculptor who couldn't find a woman who was good enough for him, so he decided to make an ivory statue of the perfect woman himself, which the goddess Aphrodite later brought to life for him. The only link between the myth and the video is that the person who wrote the description suggested that maybe the robot was its creator's idea of beauty. At around the 2-minute mark, the video turns into a shot of a heap of leaves and branches in a random backyard with absolutely no context or explanation. After watching the video, many viewers reported feeling anything but fantastic, and conspiracy theories immediately began to emerge in online forums. One of the most popular theories is that the creator of the video was a serial killer, and that the different outfits worn by the singing android throughout the video belonged to his victims. According to this theory, the killer created the android as a sort of tribute to his victims, and the backyard shown in the video is where the victims are buried. The strange lyrics and the overall creepy nature of the video reinforce this theory to some extent, but fortunately none of it is true, and the information regarding who made the android and why is actually available online. The robot in this video is called Tara the Android, and in my research I found that she was designed by a college professor in Connecticut named John Bergeron. According to the website geocities.ws, John Bergeron created Tara the singing android as a way to break into the android and animatronics industry, and even planned live performances for his android in order to get more visibility. Tara the android also appeared on a sketchy-looking tech website called androidworld.com, where you can buy the original DVDs and music videos of Tara and other similar robots singing. Some of the other music videos are even creepier, but that doesn't change the fact that this was an engineering project, not the work of a serial killer. Interestingly, although the video was uploaded in 2009, the last update that John Bergeron made to his website was in 2006, which means that the channel Creepyblog might not even be John Bergeron's channel at all. I Feel Fantastic might have just been uploaded by someone who thought the video was creepy or interesting and decided to share it online. The one thing that's confusing about the whole thing is why John Bergeron made such creepy music videos if his intention was to make a name for himself in the animatronics industry. He never provided an explanation for this. Dining room or there is nothing. Out of all of the creepypastas and scary top 10 videos that have gone viral in the last couple of decades, Dining Room or There Is Nothing is one of the videos that has left the largest number of viewers feeling creeped out. This unsettling 1-minute loop film was uploaded to YouTube in 2006. It shows a pale-faced woman sitting at the end of a dining room table in a dark house with a fire burning outside the window. After the woman opens her eyes, she says the words, "There is nothing," backwards. She then shoves her face in a bowl of food as the camera pans out to show the rest of the room. The video then plays in reverse, and after the woman raises her head from the bowl, she repeats the words "There is nothing," this time in normal order. The video ends with the chilling image of the woman closing her eyes. A year after the original video was uploaded, the creator uploaded the same video in high definition. Since the original upload, Dining Room or There Is Nothing has received almost 10 million views, and the haunting video has become a classic in the online horror community. The creepy nature of the video created a lot of speculation in online forums and social media platforms, with several users claiming that whoever watched Dining Room or There Is Nothing would be cursed. The intense stare of the woman and her cryptic message have continued to terrify viewers to this day, and even if there are countless other videos online that could be considered creepier, many people have reported that something about Dining Room or There Is Nothing has made them feel especially unsettled. After seeing how much attention his video was getting, the uploader created a website where he talks about the meaning of Dining Room or There Is Nothing, saying, "This piece was inspired by a personal paradoxical desire for empirical proof that there is nothing on the other side of life. I wanted to blur the distinction between the two states, and to state the paradox by showing someone who is coming back from life or death and denies its existence, thereby fulfilling the paradox." Despite the unsettling nature of the video and the fact that it has haunted millions of viewers worldwide, Dining Room or There Is Nothing is just a short film created by David Earl, a communications professional with a passion for experimental films. The woman in the video is Leah Porsager, a Danish artist who frequently participates in projects related to esotericism, such as this one. Even if it was just an art project, Dining Room or There Is Nothing has become a classic video in the online horror community since its original upload 17 years ago. Ian on YouTube is a channel run by 30-year-old Ian who's been posting on the platform for the better part of a decade. His content covers everything from day-in-the-life work vlogs to different adventures after hours. And while most of it is nothing more than fun, one particular encounter left him shaken to his core. On January 18th, 2024, Ian posted a video going over the disturbing experience he had while stealth camping in a McDonald's parking lot in Palm Springs, California. Stealth camping, for those who don't know, is when someone spends the night in a vehicle or tent in an area not officially designated for camping, usually while trying to avoid detection. It's often done out of necessity, curiosity, or simply for the thrill of it. And while it can be harmless, it also means the camper is completely exposed and vulnerable to whatever or whoever might be lurking nearby. This is exactly what happened with Ian on the 16th of January 2024. He'd been stealth camping for quite some time by that point, and had spent nights in much harsher conditions, like during heavy rain or in a sandstorm. So staying overnight in a McDonald's parking lot seemed like nothing to him. Unfortunately, he couldn't have been more wrong. After setting everything up, he went to lie down in the back of his car. But just as he was about to fall asleep, he was interrupted by the sound of someone repeatedly trying to open his car's door. He immediately got up to see who it was, and this is what he came across.
What's going on, man? What's going on? What's up? What's up, man? What's going on? What are you doing?
There was a man standing outside the passenger door. What made the encounter even more unsettling was that the man never said a word, even as Ian repeatedly called out to him, trying to get some kind of explanation for what he was doing.
Hey, bro. What's up? What you doing, man? Ain't weird, bro.
Despite his panic, however, he made the wise decision to stay locked within his car and quickly drive to a more hidden spot in the lot. But that wasn't enough, because just a few minutes later, Ian spotted the same man walking around the parking lot, possibly trying to locate his car. Fearing for his safety, he drove to a completely different location and managed to sleep through the rest of the night without any incident. Still, the question remained, who was this man and what exactly was he trying to do? Ian never made a follow-up or shared any more info regarding the encounter in the video's description, so we can only speculate on what happened that night. Now, it's entirely possible that he was just a harmless, mentally ill person who wasn't fully conscious of what he was doing. This could explain why he didn't answer when Ian called out to him and just calmly walked away without a word. However, a far more likely explanation is that the act of trying to break into Ian's car was completely intentional, and when he was caught, he just acted confused and harmless to seem less threatening. Perhaps he really thought the car was empty and was trying to steal it. Or maybe he knew Ian was inside and had intentions to rob him or something far more sinister. His strange behavior also suggested that he might have been under the influence of some kind of drugs, which would have made him even more unstable and by extension more dangerous. Fortunately, Ian managed to drive away unscathed before he could find out the man's true intentions. On February 11th, 2024, stealth camping YouTuber Brendan Explores posted a video of him spending a night in the small village of Jaywick, England. The thing about Jaywick, however, is that it's been named as the most deprived town in all of England. The combination of high unemployment and poor living conditions has pushed many of its residents toward a life of crime. Brendan, however, wanted to see the village firsthand to decide whether it was truly as bad as the media made it out to be. His first impressions of the place were quite good, with him admiring the natural landscape surrounding the village. What he didn't realize at the time was that this lighthearted escape to the countryside would soon spiral into complete disaster. It began with him driving through the town and searching for a discreet spot to park his van so he could settle in before it got dark. He eventually found a parking lot that looked promising and decided to make it his home for the night. But it didn't take long for him to start noticing a series of red flags in the area, like people riding around with gangster rap blaring from a speaker, and a group of street racers speeding down the road right in front of the parking lot. As the evening approached, he was also left alone in the parking lot, making him a prime target for any would-be robber. So, after thinking about it for a few minutes, he thought it would be best to leave the parking lot and find a more secluded spot for camping. He eventually went down a dirt trail and parked in the middle of nowhere without any houses or major roads nearby. This turned out to be the worst decision Brendan could have made in that situation, because at around 2:30 a.m., about 4 hours after he went to sleep, he was woken up by the sound of someone walking around his van.
I think someone's outside the van. +2.
This person then tried to open the van's sliding door.
Someone just tried the door.
But before Brendan even had a chance to fully understand his predicament, this happened.
Hey!
Whoever this person was shattered the passenger side window before running away once Brendan started shouting. In the video's description, Brendan speculated that this person was likely trying to steal the mini refrigerator he had on the passenger seat. While this might not be entirely accurate, there's still some truth behind it. Judging by the fact that the intruder fled the moment they heard Brendan, it's likely they were simply looking to steal something, nothing more. As for how they managed to find his van in the middle of nowhere, it's entirely possible that they stalked him from when he was in town. However, given these circumstances, the situation could have turned out a lot worse. As one comment under the video pointed out, when you said you had found the perfect quiet spot after driving away from town down a quiet pitch-black lane in the middle of nowhere with nobody else around for miles, at that point I was absolutely terrified. How on earth you managed to go to sleep to begin with amazes me. A few blokes with their hoods pulled down and armed, and you wouldn't have stood a chance. While nothing truly tragic occurred, the experience was terrifying enough to rattle Brendan. Instead of staying the night, he drove through the darkness until daybreak just to make it back home, which was ultimately the right call. He's still making stealth camping videos, but now he's far more cautious about where he parks, especially when it comes to remote or isolated spots. In March of 2025, a camping YouTuber named Daniel Mark Brown planned a stealth camping trip in the woodlands surrounding Oswestry, England. His plan was simple: travel alongside one of the many hiking trails in the area and then go off-trail to find a good stealth spot. And this worked better than he expected, finding the perfectly hidden camping area in no time. After setting down his supplies, Daniel went to the nearby river to cook a meal before heading back to the spot he'd found earlier. By the time he came back, it was already starting to get dark and the trail was starting to empty out, giving Daniel the peace of mind to wind down and call it a night. However, what happened next made him realize the true danger he was in. After laying out his sleeping bag, settling down, and finally falling asleep, 90 minutes had passed when he was suddenly jolted awake.
I've 100% been spotted. Right, I'm trying to keep calm and keeping calm. I'm almost too scared to breathe here. I think a dog or something just came in.
Daniel was woken up by the cracking of branches, followed by the light from a flashlight. He eventually found the courage to unzip his sleeping bag to see who was out there.
Oh, that's right. They're looking straight at me. I'm trying not to panic.
By this point, he couldn't think of anything else to do but call out to the person who was now aiming the flashlight at him. But instead of getting a reply of any kind, the person just turned around and disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again.
Hello?
They haven't been about. I haven't seen a single light now for maybe 5-10 minutes. I don't even know. I've been just trying to keep as calm as possible. But when they walked off and the light went out, I don't even know which direction they were. But somewhere in that direction. I'll forget it. Let's just go.
This experience startled him enough to quickly pack his stuff and hightail out of the wooded area. However, if the person with the flashlight had malicious intent, leaving the campsite wasn't going to be an easy task. The way they refused to respond to Daniel's hello was unsettling enough. But how they silently turned off their light and disappeared into the woods suggested they might have been hiding, waiting to ambush him to rob him, or possibly worse. That being said, it's entirely possible that the mysterious person was just someone walking their dog at night or something else completely innocent. As for why they didn't reply to Daniel, it's possible they were just as scared as he was after hearing a hello from the darkness of the woods. However, we also can't rule out the possibility that they were trying to sneak up on Daniel for some sinister reason, only turning around once they realized they'd been spotted. Whatever the case may be, Daniel made it out of the woods safely without encountering the same person again. Ellie and Graham are an elderly duo from the UK who travel around the country in their camper van while vlogging about their adventures on YouTube. In November of 2022, they were on one of their trips when they had to urgently travel back home due to an emergency. However, they were too far away to make it back in one day. After searching online, they found a stealth camping spot on the outskirts of a town called Altrincham. It was a fairly small car park, but the couple was in a hurry, so they didn't have any other choice but to camp there for the night, hoping to get back on the road the next morning. What they didn't expect, however, was that this would spiral into the most terrifying experience of their entire camping journey. By the time they got to this location, it was already dark out. They parked their van and settled in for the night, going to sleep at around 11 p.m. But then at 1 a.m., both of them woke up to the sound of loud music blaring from a car. However, the music stopped soon after, so they brushed it off and began settling back into their bed. That's when they both heard a disturbing bang coming from their own van. It was loud enough that they thought a tree had fallen onto their van. They quickly rushed outside to see what had happened, and this was the shocking sight they came across.
Just can't believe it. We've just been woken up with a loud bang, and guess you dropped something on the floor there. Or was that glass? 2 bricks, and someone's just smashed Merlin's windows while we were sleeping. So no, we don't recommend this as a place to stop. They smashed the windscreen, but Graham's hoping he can drive with that. But here's us in the middle of nowhere, with a broken window and a cracked windscreen, about 200 miles from home.
After some investigation, they found 3 bricks around the van, which was severely damaged. The windshield was cracked, the passenger side window was completely shattered, and the van had a massive dent behind the sliding door. More troubling than the physical damage to the van was the psychological impact on Ellie and Graham, who were now absolutely terrified. It's also possible that this could have been a trap designed to lure them out of the safety of their locked van. However, even after hours had passed, no one approached the couple, attempted a break-in, or made any kind of move toward them. But instead of bringing comfort, this only made the two even more unsettled. They were just attacked with multiple bricks, yet they had no idea who did it and why. After talking to the family from another camper van that was parked nearby, they learned that the attacker came in a car, as the other family heard tire screeches after the attack. Ellie and Graham also figured that this was a group effort, because despite the multiple bricks, there was only one collision sound. In other words, there were at least 3 suspects who threw bricks at the same time. Why would anyone attack an elderly couple out of nowhere and then leave without gaining anything from it? Maybe they just wanted to scare off campers for whatever reason. But if that were the case, why was the other van spared completely? Unfortunately, there's really no clues to help answer these questions. No faces were seen, no voices were heard, and no clear motive ever emerged, leaving the entire incident a complete mystery. And while Ellie and Graham were too scared to ever go stealth camping again after this incident, it seems by now they've since made a complete recovery and are back on the road again. On the 15th of July 2022, YouTuber The Abandoned Camper uploaded a video of her stealth camping in an abandoned cemetery from the 1800s. Things started off quite normal as she found a clearing hidden in the thick foliage and began unpacking her camping gear. After setting up camp, she decided to explore the cemetery to pass the time until nightfall. And that's when things started to take a strange turn. As she was filming the gravestones, she began to hear what sounded like a bunch of kids screaming. She assumed she was alone in the cemetery, however, she could not have been more wrong. As she was going back to her camp, she saw a group of kids in the distance who likely knew about her presence.
So if you can't tell, it's pretty dark here right now, but there are kids here, like young kids in the cemetery. And I'm wondering how active this place actually is. Do people come here at night and kind of party in the forest or something? That dog kind of ruined it. Not ruined it, I shouldn't say that. The dog barking, I didn't want to disturb anybody, especially since I'm not supposed to be here. So I think I'll finish my exploring tomorrow morning. And because there seems to be still a lot of stuff here. See? Hear them? I think they know I'm here. That's not good.
At this point, she was pretty certain that the kids knew about her and were just messing with her. However, she still kept her camera rolling just in case, and even made sure that she wasn't followed back to the campsite.
I'm gonna keep this recording. Just in case. But I'm also gonna stop and find out what they're doing, if they're actually watching me or not. Well, I can see them. I just don't want them to see where I'm going. Okay. I think they're gone.
Once back at her stealth campsite, she started a small fire to cook her food. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a huge mistake, because shortly after starting the fire, she started hearing the sound of people talking and walking toward her in the forest.
There are people walking around back here. They don't have headlamps on, but like I said in my last video, I do not like being around people in the middle of a forest, especially when it's dark out. So I might pack up and get out of here when I think the coast is clear.
It's unclear what the kids' intentions were, and we likely won't ever know, as she made the wise decision to avoid any risk by packing up her things and quickly leaving the cemetery, making sure to remain as quiet as possible.